This story is called Dead Can Dance. Riddle House by post-punk band The Birthday Party blared in Eric Verlaine's headphones as he approached his maroon locker at Leicestershire High. He kept his Walkman cranked to the max at all times. That way he didn't have to hear their taunts. Eric was dressed head to toe in black. A damn t-shirt, pegged pants, and a leather jacket with pins of all his favorite death rock bands. He stood in sharp contrast to his pastel-garbed classmates. Even the new waivers with their neons and checkerboard looked normal in comparison. He opened his locker and stuffed some textbooks inside. He grabbed a book of Rimbaud poems from the top shelf and was about to shut the door when Blaine Easton, Dave Standish, and Kevin Ryerson, three of Shire High's worst, walked up and pinned him against his locker. "Hey, faggot," said Blaine, the de facto leader of the squad. He wore a white cardigan and boat shoes, and all the frizzy-haired girls wanted a piece of him. "I didn't know it was Halloween already." Kevin, who had the IQ of a rock and a face to match, chimed in. "Yeah," he snorted. "What do you think you're doing, Verlaine? Going trick-or-treating or something?" Dave didn't say anything. He just stared at Eric and smirked. It was almost worse. "What's your guy's problem?" asked Eric. "What the hell did I do to you?" Blaine smacked the book of poems out of Eric's hand. "Nothing. We just don't like spooky homos. It's as simple as that." A small crowd had gathered around the locker, wondering what the popular kids were going to do to the weird goth. Kyle Lucas, a junior, whispered to some of his classmates that Eric liked to take cats to Valleyview Cemetery and skin them and squeeze their blood out into a jar that he kept in his bedroom. Kyle had never seen Eric outside of school, but the whole thing sure sounded believable to his classmates. Eric leaned down to pick up his book, but Kevin put his big grimy sneaker down on his knuckle. He cried out in pain as he felt the full weight of the star linebacker on his hand. The three laughed as tears ran down Eric's cheeks. When they had gotten their fill, they walked down the hallway, but not before Blaine called out, "We'll see you tomorrow, Dracula." Eric picked up his book and brushed it off. He looked up to see a group of his classmates staring at him bug-eyed, like it was some sort of sideshow act. "Step right up and feast your eyes on the terrible, horrible teenage goth." The school bell rang at 3 p.m. and Eric escaped the confines of Leicestershire High. He walked to the north side of town to hang out with his friends who were waiting for him in the cemetery. They were always there for him. Jonathan Trumbell, Mira Parker, Abraham Hill, Sabrina Snow. They had all died more than a century ago, but they intrigued Eric. They once had loves and hates and passions just like him, he thought. When he lay down in the cemetery grass among their graves, he felt at peace, as if he and the deceased were on the same plane. "Hi, guys," he said as he approached the crop of graves tucked away in a far corner of the cemetery. He didn't know a thing about them, but he imagined them as former poets, artists, great thinkers of a bygone era, before the likes of Duran Duran. Before heading home, he pulled out a book of his poems and started to read aloud something he had recently wrote. "Tell me of your totem stoles, of the spaces I can't know, of the life of your body before your bones had turned them from the gristle, when I'd only been a blade of grass between your thumbs while you whistle." Mr. Sanzo, the gym teacher, blew his whistle and the kids in 4th period gym class started their mandatory jumping jack push-up routine. Eric was at the far end of the gym dressed in a blank tank top, running shorts, and a pair of beat-up Chuck Taylors. He was going through the motions, wishing he were off in some quiet place, preferably the cemetery, free to focus on his art. Maybe write a few blank stanzas on the monotonous day-to-day of the American teenager. But no, he was stuck in some sweaty, smelly gym in the fucking 1980s. Blaine and Dave were there as well, and they were impossible to ignore. They stared at him and made gestures he wouldn't repeat to his stepfather on his worst day. When he looked back at them, they laughed and high-fived each other. He wished he could curl up into a ball underneath the bleachers. Mr. Sanzo broke everyone off into groups and had them do layup drills. As luck would have it, Eric was placed in the same group as Blaine. He was standing at center court, waiting for the guy in front of him to pass him the basketball when he felt a draft on his backside and saw his shorts and tidy whities pulled down to his sneakers. He turned around to see his classmates pointing and laughing at his pale bare ass. Blaine stood directly behind him, a devious smile on his face. Eric quickly pulled up his shorts and charged at him. He landed one weak punch to his shoulder, and Blaine retaliated with a swift jab to his gut. Before Eric could land another punch, Mr. Sanzo rushed over and got between the two. "Verlaine, what the hell do you think you're doing?" yelled Mr. Sanzo. "But Mr. Sanzo, Blaine pulled down my pants and I don't want to hear it who started what, alright? Come with me." Blaine leered at Eric and mouthed the word faggot as Mr. Sanzo led them out of the gym and toward Principal Coscarelli's office. "Were people so screwed up when you were alive?" asked Eric as he looked down red-faced and teary-eyed at the grave of Jonathan Trumbull. "I think I live in the age of idiocy." Mr. Trumbull had died more than 100 years prior, but he was as real and alive to Eric as anybody in his daily life, probably more so. "Everybody thinks I'm some freak. It's like Oscar Wilde. The Victorians vilified him for not sticking up to the status quo. I know I'm no Oscar Wilde, but it's the same shit, different century." The wind blew through the nearby trees, and Eric could have sworn he heard a whisper. Eric was drinking from the water fountain outside of biology class the following day when Helen Tyranny walked up to him and said hello. He turned around and wiped some excess water from his chin. He wasn't used to people greeting him in the hallway, not unless they were there to torment him. Helen wasn't one of the popular girls, but she was no outcast either. She kind of skirted the line between punk and straight. She liked the Go-Go's and went to punk shows, but she was friends with girls on the cheerleading squad, and her dad owned a baseball card shop down on Memorial Drive. She was pretty in an old-fashioned kind of way and wore funky-looking dresses. "Hi, Helen," said Eric nervously. Helen smiled at him. "Nice shirt." He looked down. Morrissey and the rest of the Smiths were printed on the front, standing on some bleak English street, looking cool as shit. "Thanks." "Hey, there's a party at Claire Ziering's house tonight. Should be a blast. You should come hang with me and my friends." Eric hadn't been to a party since his friend's Empire Strikes Back themed shindig in middle school, and there were no girls at that one. "I'm not really sure if I can come," said Eric. "I kinda have to. It'll be fun," said Helen, sensing his unease. She sweetened the proposition. "Going to be plenty of good music, the Cult, Oingo Boingo, Boomtown Rats. What do you say?" "Sure," he said, a tiny smile cracking through his morose exterior. "What time should I show up?" Claire Ziering's luxurious house sat on a sharp hill overlooking the town of Leicestershire. It was only a short drive from the cemetery in the town's business district. The close proximity to Valleyview and his ancient friends made Eric feel a little less uneasy as he entered Claire's house. Her parents were on vacation in Cabo, so the party was an all-out blitz. 100 or so students from Shire High were crammed in the various rooms of the house. Shout by Tears for Fears was blasting through the Ziering's top-of-the-line Sony stereo. Empty Miller light cans littered the floor. "Eric, over here!" Helen called from the kitchen. She was standing with some of her friends Eric recognized from the school. Much to his surprise, they all waved and smiled at him. The next hour was something akin to a dream. They laughed, made fun of some of Shire High's worst teachers, and talked pop culture. They all marveled at Eric's encyclopedic knowledge of music and literature. For the first time in years, he felt accepted. He wondered, could I actually make some living, breathing friends? The fun was interrupted by the sound of Blaine screaming from the front door. "Are you fucking kidding me? Eric Verlaine? Who the hell let this queer in?" Kevin and Dave stood behind him like silent guards. Eric's chest felt tight. Everyone in the party was staring at him. It was like the hallway at school all over again. We did, said Helen, defiantly. She scowled at Blaine and nodded back toward her friends. You got a problem with that? Tyranny, you're too good for this creep, said Blaine. Since when did you start associating with the scum of the valley? Maybe it was the alcohol, or maybe he just couldn't stand there and let this dick attack his newfound friend. Eric walked out into the living room and got face to face with Blaine. Blaine laughed. What do you think you're doing, Verlaine? You want to kiss me or something, faggot? A rage fueled by months of torment reached a breaking point, and Eric charged at Blaine like a bull. He knocked him into a coffee table, sending an expensive lamp crashing to the floor. Kevin and Dave quickly pulled him off Blaine and started pummeling him. Get off him, said Charles Beaumont, a junior on the cross-country team. He and another one of Helen's friends pushed Blaine's goons away, giving Eric enough room to run out the front door. Eric dashed down Claire's driveway and kept running. His house was 2 miles away and it was getting late, so he headed to the only place he felt safe, Valleyview Cemetery. When he got to his favorite spot, he stopped to catch his breath. The graves of his friends looked different under the light of the moon, though no less welcoming. Eric told them about the party and what happened, about how amazing it felt to talk to kids his age and how shitty Blaine and his buddies were. That kid deserves a beating, he said, looking down at Abraham Hill's grave. That's when he heard a voice. Who the hell are you talking to, faggot? It was Blaine. Kevin and Dave were standing there too. They were drunk and angry. Go away, Blaine, shouted Eric. You're not welcome here. That's it, you creepy fuck. You're dead. Blaine ran up to Eric and clobbered him in the face, sending him down to the cold cemetery grass. Before Eric had a chance to recover, Kevin and Dave started kicking him in the ribs. Eric screamed in agony. Help me! Help! Blaine grabbed him by his leather jacket and pulled him from the ground. No one is going to help you. You chose the wrong place to hide. He pushed Eric toward Kevin, who socked him in the stomach. Eric cried out in pain as Kevin pushed him toward Dave, who kicked him in the nuts and elbowed him in the face. The three of them passed Eric around like a doll, back and forth, back and forth. Blood streamed down his bruised, swollen face. He was a small kid and they had no idea how close to death they were driving him. Finally, they dropped him to the ground and stood in front of him, laughing. Behind their backs, Eric saw movement out of the corner of his throbbing eye. 4 transparent shapes were rising from the ground. They had a day-glow green shade to them, like the black-light posters hanging in his bedroom. They ranged in height from about 5 feet to a little over 6 feet, and they seemed to be dressed in the clothing of a bygone era. They drew closer to his attackers, and that's when it hit him. These were his friends, his dead friends. They took on a more corporeal shape, and he could make out individual features of each identity. One of the guys looked like the frontman for some new romantic band like Spandau Ballet, but that guy didn't have flesh hanging from his face like this one. Eric wondered, in awe of the moment, is that Abraham or Jonathan? Suddenly, Blaine, Kevin, and Dave were whisked into the air 10 feet up. They screamed as they looked down and saw the ravenous glowing bodies hoisting them up. The ghosts dropped Blaine and his lackeys and they screamed as they connected with the ground. The attack continued for several minutes. Blaine was thrown headfirst into an obelisk. Kevin was kicked back against a marble angel. Dave's mouth was stuffed full of dirt and worms and God knows what. Finally, after a few broken bones and a half pint of blood, the ghosts let them go. They ran out screaming out of the cemetery toward Blaine's BMW. Eric watched as Blaine's car sped away wildly. He turned to the ghosts and smiled. Thank you. They looked at him and nodded before drifting downward and disappearing into the dirt. About 30 seconds later, Eric heard a loud crash up the road and saw a large flame shoot up into the sky. The loudspeaker in the hallway clicked out and drifted the muffled voice of Leicestershire High's principal. I'm sure you're all aware of the accident that took the lives of Blaine Easton, Dave Standish, and Kevin Ryerson this past weekend. A counselor is standing by for those impacted by this event. May this serve as a tragic reminder that you should never drink and drive. The announcement ended, and Eric and his new friends continued their conversation. Eric's face was still pretty banged up from the other night. "Can't believe what happened to those guys," said Helen to Eric and her other friends. "They were assholes, but geez." Eric thought about the ghosts. He saw the faces of Blaine, Dave, and Kevin screaming. A look of manic terror in their eyes as the avenging spirits clawed at them and threw them around like cats toying with mice. The group discussed their deceased classmates for a couple minutes more before the bell rang. "So we'll see you at the arcade later?" said Helen. "Definitely," said Eric. He waved goodbye to his new friends and shut his locker. He walked down the hallway clad in black, holding his poems, and no one bothered him.